Good evening from Plughead Studios in Largo, Florida. I'm Scott. And we are here with episode 492 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology, for February 11th, 2018. This show is a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. This week, Apple has reduced a long-time iPhone flaw. Google might try its hand at video games, and Charter wants to improve your internet speed. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be Facebook or Twitter or Google+, or of course the podcast services, Apple Podcasts, Google Music Play Podcasts, the Podcast Play app in the Windows Store, the myriad of other podcatchers like Stitcher or TuneIn, our live stream partners, which is a long list, including Livestream, Mixer, Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube Live, or of course on our apps, plughinslive.com/apps. Thank you for making us a part of your day. This here is F5 Live, Refreshing Technology, the flagship show on the Plugins Live family of content. We are live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for about an hour. We talk about the latest news in gadgets, gaming, internet, and media. There are two ways that you can join us. The first is live on Sunday nights, and that's by going to f5live.tv/join us. From there, you can chat with us here in the studio. Tonight, the chat rooms that we are actively monitoring will be Mixer, Mixer, Twitch, and Livestream. So definitely join us over there if you can, but if you can't, that is okay. You can always go to plughinslive.com/subscribe, and there you can see all of our shows, including F5 Live and The Pilch Point, in which Avram will be talking in a little bit about kind of do's and don'ts when configuring your own laptop. And then our special events feed, which there are 4 more CES episodes to be published, 2 tomorrow being Monday and 2 on Tuesday. And then we have a special interview that will be published in the near future, which is a personal kind of tech-exclusive walkthrough of the new DefenseWorks facility in Las Vegas, which opened, or had its debut during CES, and the Vice President was there. If you were at CES and you know that transportation sucked one day, it's because the Vice President was in town for this event, and so we'll bring that to you in the very near future. It was pretty cool to get to be there. And then our other shows, like the new product Launchpad, we've got a new series coming there, the 3000 Brigade podcast, and a bunch of other stuff as well. And I guess that is the spiel. Avram, how are you doing? Has it? and I didn't get any messages from you going, hey, how do I do this? So you did pretty well. Sure. Yeah, I believe that to be correct. I haven't been into the settings on a Windows 10s computer. Okay. Ooh. Uh-huh. Yep. That's a smart idea.
It's something we could have done months ago. It's just I didn't want to. I didn't have to take the time to like build a new app for it. But this week I did it, and we bought a bunch of Windows 10s computers. So it's not just going to be one. We're going to be doing this on 3 different laptops. So we should be able to have a pretty definitive answer about that.
That's awesome.
I mean,
Okay.
it take a few days because we got to run the battery test
Sure.
a whole bunch of
A
times.
whole bunch of times.
I mean, one time should be enough. Our battery test doesn't have deltas from one run to another, but because I've recoded the battery test from scratch for this,
Right.
we will do it 3 times to make sure that there's not dramatic delta between 1, 2, and 3. Let's say before we upgrade them and do it again, because it's really hard to downgrade back to Windows 10s once you've upgraded.
Sure. Yeah, that's for that's
we did on one laptop to get back to where it is now, and it was a real pain in the butt. Took several hours. So I wouldn't, once you leave Windows 10s, you probably don't want to come back.
That's for sure.
Why you would want to come back is a really good question too, because
yeah.
Why you would want to be there in the first place is, also a question.
Well,
but that's another story.
You may not, but an IT manager for a school or something might. But anyway, that's an interesting thing. I can't wait to hear the results of that. And
we should have that for you next week.
Awesome. So while you've been working on that, I have been working on a story that you and I talked about 2 weeks ago. About the value of doing drive-by crypto mining and how long it takes to justify the expense. And so that's a complex a complex topic that I'm working on. I'm going to be asking our viewers to help out with a bit of a tech survey in the next couple of days. I've been putting that together now. It involves our own drive-by crypto mining thing as part of the survey to find out what the average turnaround is for people just going to a thing. So that should be a lot of fun. I'm using the same software that 90% of those drive-bys are using. So that should be a lot of fun. That probably won't be next week. That'll probably be in 2. But yeah, so we're both working on some cool stuff for the future, which I'm looking forward to on both. And anyway, I guess with that, let's get into the news of the week. How's that sound? This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you are looking for a tablet, a laptop, the Surface Studio, which is obviously a specialized device, Office 365, Xbox games, Windows Store apps, mixed reality, or the Harman Kardon Invoke, they've got a little bit of everything with a lot of stuff on sale right now. A couple of models of the Surface are on sale. There are some laptops that currently have up to $1,000 off, and obviously a lot of deals. And you can find some of those best deals by going to f5live.tv/Microsoft. So, obviously we have talked a little bit in the past about, and we will continue to talk about tonight, the interesting behavior out of Apple over a couple of their previous iPhones, and the fact that 6, 6S, and 7 devices, as they aged, Apple started to throttle the performance of the device, claiming that there was a power management something that when the battery started to get older, the phones would just randomly turn off. Now, that's bizarre, as Avram and I have talked about, because, you know, there have been smartphones dating back to technically the late 90s, but in the early 2000s is when, you know, BlackBerry and Palm and Microsoft really took off with smartphones. All of them had them. So there was Windows CE and Windows Mobile, Palm OS, Web OS, BlackBerry OS. Let's see, Symbian, Sailfish came after. All of the never had this problem until now, despite Apple saying that it's a ubiquitous problem. I think that's similar to them blaming BlackBerry for teaching you to hold your phone wrong on the iPhone 4. Anyway, this week something interesting happened. iOS 11.3 came out in one of its betas, and in that beta came the settings to be able to disable the throttling on older devices, the battery health setting or something like that. In there, you can see what the maximum charge potential is for your battery, which is actually kind of an interesting statistic. I've got a 6S Plus that it said 85% of the battery was still good, which means 15% has gone bad, which is actually kind of an interesting statistic. But along with that, of course, comes release notes, and with those release notes comes information, and the information is that the 8, 8 Plus, and X will not be affected by the throttling, which is kind of interesting. I don't know whether that means that they have fixed the underlying problem or what. In the thing, they claim that their hardware power management system has changed since the iPhone 7 to the 8, which means that means that they've known that there was a flaw in their hardware for a couple of generations and tried to fix it by not telling anybody. That's kind of a weird behavior.
Or they realized this would hurt sales of the new phones, so they're not going to do it to the new phones.
That could be. Obviously, we saw their quarterly numbers, and their iPhone sales are down. So numerically, there is some possibility to that theory. Obviously, the high price of the X and the uninteresting.
They can always do it later. They can always do it later. This is a software thing. They can always do it later.
Absolutely, they can.
Also, there's no need for them to do it now because the justification for doing it was that the batteries are getting old, and therefore we're trying to save your battery by throttling down your CPU.
Sure.
But the 8 just came out in September, right?
Right.
And the 10 has been. I don't even. When did the 10 roll out? October, November.
Something like that.
Many? So the oldest phones of those are like 6 months old, are not even 6 months old.
True.
So why would they? So of course they're not They better not be throttling them. Their bad batteries better not be bad after 6 months.
But what they're saying is that they will not have to throttle these devices in the future. I believe I have the quote here in front of me. As a result, the impacts of performance management may be less noticeable on iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and X. Over time, the rechargeable batteries in all iPhone models will diminish. That's not related. iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and X models use a different advanced hardware and software design that provides a more accurate estimation of both power needs and the battery's power capability to maximize overall system performance. As a result, the impacts of performance. So what they're saying is they've replaced the power management system, and basically they're saying that their system used to lie to them about how much power was left, and that's why their phones would turn off. It's kind of an interesting assertion, but it's definitely interesting. I'm glad. So the first reports of devices shutting off happened before the 7s came out. So they wouldn't have had enough time just before the 7s came out. So they wouldn't have had enough time to make a major hardware change in time for the 7s. But since they've known that the devices are starting to shut off, at least this is basically saying from the time we knew that the problem existed, we've been working to fix it. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's good PR, I guess,
For sure.
But we'll have to see. I mean, obviously, if they were planning to throttle those phones, they probably have to change that plan now, because it looks very bad for them now, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Now,
yeah,
I could still see
it may just be them saying we're not doing it to this one because things are better, and it's all, like you said, it's all more about PR than anything.
Yeah, but I mean, who could say? I mean, obviously,
Indeed.
Apple had their reasons for throttling those phones. It's, I guess what people will see is, I mean, I think a lot of people who were skeptical of Apple's reasoning thought, hey, this is kind of a planned obsolescence. Like we're throttling the phone so that we say we're throttling the phone because we're trying to save your battery, but on the other hand, this gives you an incentive to buy a new phone.
Right.
But once that was revealed, it gave people incentive to buy a battery, which is a lot cheaper than buying a whole new phone. So,
especially after they discounted the price of the battery.
Right, exactly. So it's that was very bad PR for them, and I don't know what to say. I mean, we hope to take them at their word, but it doesn't look good that that people had to find out they were doing this.
Indeed. Yeah, they certainly didn't think that anybody was going to figure it out, obviously, or they would have announced that they were doing it and not kept it secret, which I think was the fact that they never announced and didn't put any settings or notifications that they were starting to do this is where a lot of the conspiracy concerns came from.
Yes.
But anyway, obviously, there's no way of knowing today what their future plans actually are. We only have them at their word that this is what their plans are. It'll be a year or longer before the throttling would go into effect. So, obviously, there are sites that are going to regularly test the performance of devices, since that's how the scheme was found in the first place. Those sites will continue to run those tests on new devices to make sure that this isn't just them saying we're not doing it on the new devices and then doing it anyway. But it's a year or more before it would go into effect anyway, so who knows what happens in 12 months. Anytime there's a shakeup in the company, plans change, and you never know. In a year, Tim Cook might not be CEO. You never know. Who knows? So
Yeah.
But right now, this is what they're saying. We'll see what the future holds. This week's Pilch Point with Avram Pilch is proudly powered by Monster. The headphones on my head, the Monster DNAs, and a wide variety of other. These are on-ear. They also offer headphones in over-ear, like the Elements that I normally wear, or in-ears, including the iSports and the new Element and iSport AirLinks, which are true wireless Bluetooth, which are really nice, and of course, the whole new line of Bluetooth speakers, including the Superstar S100, 200, 300, 400, and the Monster Blaster, are all available at the all-new Monster website by going to plughitslive.com/monster. And of course, that music means that it's time for the Pilch Point with online editorial director of Laptop Magazine and Tom's Guide, Avram Pilch. And Avram has got a really great topic for us this week. We're going to talk about what is a good idea and not a good idea when configuring a laptop, right?
Yeah, actually, this advice will go for desktops too if you're buying one. If now, it's less common these days than it was in the past to be able to go to a website and say, make my computer exactly this way. I want this much RAM. I want this type of storage drive. I want this CPU. I want this, I want this graphics card. I want this screen. Like, it's less common and the choices are fewer than they were in years past. But there still are several sites where you can do this. Dell, Lenovo, and HP, all, if you buy through their websites, offer the ability to, on at least some of their models, to custom configure them. And even if you're not, per se, like getting a menu where you could pick, I want 8 gigs of RAM and I want a 256 gig SSD or something, you still have choices of different configurations that are pre-made. And so this advice should help you choosing amongst those. So there are a few different specs that are really key for somebody to look at, and you always have to balance price with, with performance. So, my general advice for the CPU is to, simply put, get a Core i5, unless you're buying a gaming notebook or a gaming desktop. Core i5, whether you're getting a ultra slim device like a Core i5 U series Ultrabook, or you're getting a somewhat thicker device. I mean, on the case of laptops, most are what we call U series processors. The difference between a Core i5 and a Core i7 in price might be $100 or $150. In performance, it's very, very small. So Core i5 should be good enough for most people. When you talk now, obviously, in terms of budget, if people are buying a laptop or a desktop that's, say, under $400, then Core i5 is hard to come by. You'll have to settle for a Core i3 or perhaps even a Celeron. But if you're spending that kind of money, then you don't really get a great choice of CPUs. If you're spending more than $400, you should expect and count on getting a Core i5. In terms of RAM, in terms of the memory, 8 gigabytes right now is the sweet spot in terms of price and affordability. 4 is too little for most people. you're multitasking, you've got several tabs open in your browser. It doesn't you don't have to be huge, a professional video editor to need 8 gigs of RAM. Now, if you're a really intense worker, maybe it's worth it for you to spend the extra to get 16 gigs of RAM. But typically, if you're buying, typically the additional cost is $100 to $150 more to move from 8 to 16. So that's a cost that you can avoid. When you're looking at the storage in your laptop, your hard drive or SSD, our advice, which is not surprising to anyone who's listened to me for any length of time or read my articles for any length of time, is that you should always buy an SSD over a hard drive. If you're spending more than $600 or $700 on a laptop, or on a desktop, you should be able to get an SSD. Now, as far as the capacity goes, you should not get less than 256 gigs. 512 would be nice to get a larger size, like 512 gigabytes would be nice, but that can add significantly to the cost. If you're buying a device, a laptop or desktop that is user upgradable, you could say, and you feel comfortable upgrading your own storage, then you could buy it with a hard drive or the lowest, smallest SSD, and buy a third-party storage device on the aftermarket at a site like Amazon or Newegg, and you could save yourself quite a bit of money, because there you could get the whole 512 gigabyte drive for like $130 to $150 if it's on sale. So, but nevertheless, you want at least a 256 and you want an SSD. Another couple of things just to keep in mind. You definitely want your screen to be at least 1920 by 1080. That's no shocker, as we've talked about that a lot before on this show.
For years,
it's worth spending extra $50, $100 extra, or even more than that, to go up from the minuscule 1366 displays. If you're on a desktop, you really won't get any less than that anyway, than a 1080p display. You don't, unless you're really doing a lot of media consumption, you really want to just absolutely, or you're a professional photo editor, you don't necessarily have to go higher resolution than 1080p. Finally, do you want a discrete graphics card? You will want a discrete graphics card if you're gaming or if you're doing graphics work. However, if you are not, or you're just playing some casual games, you probably don't want to spend extra to get discrete graphics. If you are getting discrete graphics, getting the lowest level of discrete graphics, which right now is an NVIDIA 150MX graphics chip, probably isn't worth the money, because it's not going to give you enough of a performance boost to get you playing games. The minimum you should get is NVIDIA GTX 1050, and if you want to do VR, like with an Oculus, you'll need a GTX 1060. So that's your discrete graphics. We cover a couple more a couple more options, like the battery and the Wi-Fi card, in my article on laptopmag.com, which you can check out tomorrow, how to configure your laptop. But I just wanted to mention that, because there's these are some of the really important choices that you have to make when shopping for a computer, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, or an all-in-one. You want to make sure that you're spending your money wisely.
Absolutely, because you don't want to end up spending money on something that isn't going to make things better for you, when if you need to configure, for example, more RAM, or the $50 difference between feature A and feature B could be used to upgrade your monitor, your screen on your laptop instead. Obviously, there are better ways to put your money to use.
Yeah, in order of importance, screen, SSD, processor RAM, or maybe screen SSD RAM processor. RAM and processor, I guess you could go either way, but I would say the processor is actually, if you don't have a nice screen, you're going to notice no matter how little you're doing on the computer, right?
Yeah, no
If you don't
no matter what you're using it for.
you could be watching Netflix. You can watch Netflix just fine on the Celeron, on the lowest end processor. But if your screen is bad, you'll notice.
Yeah.
And SSD affects the most important parts of your performance, which is booting, opening apps, opening files, switching tasks. When you're using a mechanical hard drive, all those things are just infinitely slower.
Yeah.
So, the two most important things are the screen and the storage before you look at the processor or the RAM.
Absolutely. And as evidence of all of this, Avram, the computer that you are on right now here in the studio, we actually downgraded the quality of the processor because we went from a full desktop actually to a stick computer behind the television that you're on. For those of you who are watching live and not the recorded split screen, the screen that Avram's on next to me here, we actually are using a little stick computer that we got on Prime Day for like $55, down from like a $600 or $700 desktop, and the performance on your new machine versus the old one is so much better, partially because we went from a spinning drive to flash storage in the stick, but obviously there's some other considerations too. But our RAM went down, our processor went down, but the system runs better.
Wow, I didn't realize I was on such a cheap machine. I don't know how to feel about that.
It was the best decision ever. It works so much better, and now you can come with us, which you couldn't before. Kind of a cool capability. Anyway,
I feel like Max Headroom now.
Yeah, except you're not going to get hacked into a national broadcast for 3.5 minutes. One of my favorite tech things in history. Anyway, as always, Avram, thank you. Your advice helps a lot of people in their buying decisions. You said that this will be available on Monday?
It'll be available on Monday on laptopmag.com. So check us out there for all of our laptop advice, and check out tomsguide.com for all of our other electronic buying advice for desktops, phones, and everything else.
Fantastic. And we mentioned at the top of the of F5 Live that you just redid the battery test for Laptop Mag because you've got a cool story coming soon there too, right?
Yep. We'll probably talk about it on the next show.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. Until then, I guess that is the Pilch Point. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. All of the gaming accessories and hardware that you need to up your game, whether it be a keyboard or a mouse, the new Razer phone, a good USB mic, or a full laptop like the Razer Blade series. And there's also, just to throw it out there, they've got their Project Linda, which is a fascinating concept that they showed off at CES this year, which we've got an interview about at pluginslive.com/CES. But to find out about all of the current products that they sell and some of the deals that are going on right now, you can do that by going to f5live.tv/Razer. So, this one was a surprise for me this week, mostly because this rumor popped up a number of years ago and it was thrown away as nonsense, but may not be the nonsense that we thought it was. It looks like Google might be interested in getting into video games in a different way. Obviously, we all know that Google owns YouTube and YouTube has YouTube Gaming, and that's trying to be a competitor for Twitch. And it's not doing a great job of it, but they're trying. But they want to go the other direction. They want to stream games from them to you instead of the other way around. We've seen services like this before. In fact, we've seen a lot of services like this before over the years. The probably the most famous of them was OnLive, who failed spectacularly 3 or 4 times as they kept getting bought and relaunched and collapsed again. OnLive almost took down GameFly at one point. It's been a rocky road for game streaming. The only real success in the industry required an acquisition by Sony to be able to pull off, and it's PlayStation Now. It used to have another name, but it's known as PlayStation Now today. And even that service is questionable because it relies on a back catalog, nothing new. We don't quite know what Google wants to do here. It's possible that they want to... I don't know. Do they want to do Android games? Do they want to try and do AAA titles and have exclusives? Do they want to do it to PC or Android or Chrome OS? Do they want to try and build their own hardware, which has been a rocky road for Google as well? What could they possibly want to do here, and do they stand a chance against the big three today? What do you think, Avram?
Well, let's not rule out NVIDIA here. I mean, have you seen the new? Have you gotten to play with GeForce Now at all?
Okay, fair enough. Yes, I have. I always forget about it though, which is probably not great for their branding.
I mean, they're still in free beta. But FYI for our listeners, you can sign up for free, and GeForce Now works really well. I mean, I think you have to buy the game, so you're not getting a free game, but you're getting access to basically a GPU in the cloud, and you can play it on any PC that you want or on a Mac. So they were.
Or to any of their Shield hardware.
Right. I mean, they were showing at CES, they had just released this for PC, the beta for PC. It was only Mac previously. Mm-hmm. And they showed it, and they were showing us like an HP Stream. That's like the cheapest Windows computer you can get. Uh-huh. It's like a $180 computer with Celeron and 4 gigs of RAM, maybe 2 gigs of RAM, whatever. And they were able to play like really hardcore games on it.
Indeed.
Why? Because they're streaming it from the cloud, and they do such a good job of streaming that you even have a decent internet connection. You don't have the latency that is going to make the game impossible to play. So if you look at that, I mean, why wouldn't Google want to be in this game?
Well, in fairness, OnLive worked real well too, and it was a commercial failure 3 or 4 times. The thing that became PlayStation Now worked very well, and it was a commercial failure until Sony bought it and integrated it into the PlayStation 4. There have been great services. I mean, we interviewed a new company who's trying to get into the space in Eureka Park this year, but only Sony has had any success with it. And the only reason that they've done that is because they integrated it into their dedicated hardware.
See, this is an interesting question. I often wonder whether the industry would really be happy with this. Like, this would make our lives a little more boring, although a great convenience for the consumer, if you all of a sudden didn't need good graphics on your local computer.
Sure. I
Like,
I could see. So obviously, Sony thought that there was value behind it because they purchased a company and integrated it. I could see it being the next addition to the Xbox. You know, the kind of the combination of the Xbox Play Anywhere and the Game Time features. If you put those two things together, you end up with a streaming service, which Microsoft has been working on for 2 years, but they're already the heavy hitters in the market. The idea of somebody new, and it doesn't seem to matter who it is. GameFly was one of the largest names in the video game market. They were I hate this terminology, but it's what they use for themselves, the Netflix of video games, and even they couldn't make it work financially, commercially.
yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends on what the model, what the licensing model is for Google, what kind of titles they're getting, things like that. GeForce Now is an interesting case because I don't think that you actually like I think they do have to do something to support each game, but I think that game developers, platforms like Steam or whatever would like something like GeForce Now because they're not having to. People still have to buy the game. It doesn't matter whether the hardware is in the cloud or not. They still have to buy the game and pay the same amount for the game that they would if they had their own dedicated hardware. But if you have something like a GameFly, you know, are the companies going to kind of be asked to are the publishers not going to be like if it's an all you can eat type of service or whatever, like a Spotify, Netflix type of thing, then I don't think that's advantageous to publishers because I'm sure that the latest and greatest games either aren't going to be on there or they're going to be asked to license them for a lot less than an individual would pay.
Sure. with with the obvious exception being if the service is provided by a publisher, for example, Sony or Microsoft, who can receive the direct benefit out of it.
Right. So, I mean, actually it would be interesting for Steam to do something like this themselves.
They're probably, as far as for me, I see this being if Google tries to get into this, I can see that being an on live kind of thing, that it would be their next Google Wave that just wouldn't go. But I can see if somebody without dedicated hardware, because I'm not going to consider the 8 Steam machines that were sold to be dedicated hardware. So if a company without dedicated hardware was going to succeed in it, it would be Valve, for sure.
Right, because they have the content, and the content is what matters.
Yeah. So looking at NVIDIA, the GeForce Now thing, it's $8 a month. 60 of the 100 titles come included. 40 are an additional charge.
Really? Because that's interesting. Because the Mac version right now, the Mac and PC version right now is free in beta. Like it's going to be $8.
Yeah, that's because this has been available on the Shield for a little while.
Oh, that's what you had to get on the Shield. Yeah.
This was one of the ways that you could play games on the Shield, and the $8 a month thing. I can't imagine that they're going to have different prices depending on where you are. So I'm just going to assume that when it goes to market, it'll fall under the existing $8 a month. But like BioShock is included, but Batman Arkham Knight is not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think
BioShock is included. BioShock 2 is not. To put that.
I kind of don't want. I mean, this is very selfish of me, but I kind of don't want these to succeed too much because it kind of takes all the fun out of the hardware. Like who would buy a gaming laptop? Who would buy, who would trick out their would custom build a cool desktop if instead you could pay, I don't know, $10 a month or something to have, a set fee to have all your stuff in the cloud and then
Sure.
use it on whatever cheap computer you want, you know. Why would you pay all that money for all that processing power on your desk when you could just pay a small amount and stream from the cloud?
You would definitely see probably an increase in gaming accessories again.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the things that you touch really matter. So like your screen, nobody, people will still want a great screen.
Yes.
People will still want a great keyboard. People will still want a great gaming mouse. They will still
Or
want controllers.
I would say or controllers, yeah.
But why would you
Sure.
spend like $3,000 on a gaming laptop to get GTX 1080
Uh-huh.
graphics or whatever when you could spend a few dollars a month to get access to that, and then when GTX 1080 is no longer the best thing in a year or two, presumably the cloud service will upgrade, and
Sure. Sure. Now, obviously, I 100% agree with that sentiment. On the other hand, let me play the other side on NVIDIA's side for a moment in particular. This would certainly take some strain off of them in the current marketplace where they can't produce graphics cards fast enough to support both gamers and cryptocurrency miners.
Yeah, well, is that really what you want? Is to lower the demand for your product? I mean,
Well,
I mean,
it depends. If you're selling a $150 graphics card, or you can charge $10 a month for 12 months, the recurring revenue is definitely something
yeah,
that investors are more interested in seeing as recurring rather than one time.
yeah. I mean, I think that's their advantage. Plus, if it's another player like Google, they still have to buy the graphics cards from somewhere.
True. Although, in fairness, Google's been getting into designing their own chips and chipsets lately, so there's kind of no telling what weird market they'll get into at any given time.
Yeah, plus you have efficiencies in the cloud, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to have one GPU for every user.
Right. You can cluster, or you can either cluster users or hardware depending on what it is you're doing. One user could get multiple GPUs, or one GPU could get multiple users if they're playing something like Worms. It doesn't require something powerful, but if you are playing something powerful, you could up what the user is experiencing, or you could have multiple tiers.
Yeah.
There's definitely some possible benefit in that case to somebody like NVIDIA, but I don't think so much for Google. I think it's a weird move for Google. If you're curious about how serious they are about this, they considered releasing the service for holiday 2017. So that's how serious they are about it. My guess is we will hear some rumblings about it at Google I/O this year, just a guess. It'll probably be where we see it happen. I don't know why they delayed a holiday 2017, probably because they didn't want to get lost in the hype that Nintendo kind of owned for the holidays this year.
Maybe it wasn't ready.
Maybe they didn't have enough partnerships to have enough content to justify releasing anything, or maybe they're trying to build partnerships to build hardware like Valve tried to do with the Steam machines, where they don't want to be responsible for hardware. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's all speculation based on a very small amount of information that somebody talked to the press with. So we will have to wait for Google's official announcement on it because, as you would expect, no comment.
Everybody wants to be in the gaming business, though. Wherever I go, whoever I meet with, hardware vendors, software vendors, everybody likes the gaming business because it's a high margin business. There's really passionate consumers.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to be in the gaming business, whether they have the gamer DNA or not.
Yeah.
And I would not say that Google has gamer DNA. So everybody wants to be in that business, so why not Google? I mean, Microsoft wants to be in that business. Yeah, I mean,
It's true, but they got into the business 16 years ago.
yeah, they've been in the business for a long time,
when there
and they
was
keep expanding it.
But they did it when there was a gap. They did it when there was, as Sega was creating a gap in the industry. Microsoft went, we can fill that gap. Today, there's no gap. Nintendo looked like maybe they were going to create one, but the Switch came back and is the fastest selling gaming console of all time. So it would be a weird time to try and get into it today, I think. Valve tried to do it when there was a gap in the space. People were concerned about Windows 8. And NVIDIA tried to do it as phones kind of sucked, and so they were trying to create a handheld gaming, but there's no gap for Google to try and slip in, so I think it's a weird time. Maybe that's why they didn't try and do it in the holidays. Maybe they think there's a gap that's going to open. Who knows? We'll see in the future, though. This week's news from the tubes on F5 Live is proudly powered by RiffTrax. Make fun of movies, or let these guys do it for you, because that's what they get paid to do. The guys who used to do Mystery Science Theater 3000 are back and doing what they do best, making fun of movies, from blockbusters to Invasion of the Animal People. Can't make these things up. They've got a little bit of everything. The way it works is for a couple of bucks, you download the MP3, play it along with your DVD, Netflix, Amazon, wherever the movie happens to live. With a movie as bad as Invasion of the Animal People, it's probably on Netflix. But of course, from time to time, they do some live events. They've got some new ones on the horizon, from what we understand. They have not announced what the full lineup will be, but they do have a deal this week. The Wonderful Land of Oz is available for $2 off. And you can find the deal and all of their films and shorts by going to f5live.tv/rifftrax with an X. The Wonderful Land of Oz. That's a story in the franchise I'm unaware of. Anyway, so it looks like maybe 2018 is going to be the year of gigabit internet. If you've been watching the Olympics, you have probably seen, even if you're not a a Comcast customer, you've probably seen the advertising that Comcast has been doing for their what they're calling gig speed internet, which they're planning on rolling out to a number of customers, but not to be outdone. Charter, who is the number 2 largest cable company in the U.S., thanks to a couple of acquisitions last year and the year before, has announced that of their, I believe the number I saw was 50 million residential homes that they serve, 40 million of those customers will be receiving the option for gigabit internet speeds by the end of this year, which is kind of exciting for most Charter customers. I am a Charter customer who is in the 10 million, who will not be covered, which is very disappointing. Maybe they'll do a second rollout in 2019 or something. I did find it interesting that while Tampa and Orlando were not covered, Hawaii was, which seems like a pretty expensive market to try and upgrade your speeds in. But the thing you need to know about cable companies going to gigabit connections is that the current communication standard that they use does not allow, the hardware does not allow for symmetrical speeds. So if you sign up for a gigabit plan with either Charter or Comcast, know that your down speeds and your up speeds will be very different. I do not know what Comcast speeds will be, but Charter's will be gig down and only 35 up, which is the same as I have currently, which is pretty annoying because the reason I would want to switch is so that I can up the video quality for those of you watching live. But that wouldn't work for me, which makes me sad. However, a future version of the standard will allow for symmetrical, and once they've got the bandwidth to do it, everything will be good. So are you still, do you fall under Charter, Avram?
No, I'm on FiOS.
Oh, okay.
I'm on FiOS, and I was just looking it up here. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think there's a way. I noticed that FiOS is advertising that they're going to have gigabit or something.
Okay.
But the highest speed that they offer right now, at least in my area, is 150 megabit per second.
Okay.
But I guess the question is, at what point does this matter?
Right.
Like, because is that going to fix your latency? Or is that just pure throughput where, if you only need, 50 megabit per second to broadcast your video, but the real problem is, that you're not really getting good latency.
You've got a 300 millisecond ping or more.
Is that really going to help you, or is it just kind of showing off?
Right, exactly. Is it putting a 450 horsepower engine in a jalopy?
I mean, I don't know what the relationship is from one to the other. Is there any relationship between having good ping and having good throughput?
Not necessarily.
Right? I mean, obviously, if you are on a modem, then you have a problem. But if the bottleneck is not, the bottleneck might not be might not be the throughput.
Right, exactly. But for some applications, for example, bi-directional game streaming, having more bandwidth could allow for going from 1080 to 4K, for example. It might allow for more capability on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and those things for an average consumer. Obviously, not having symmetrical speeds right now means that for me there's zero benefit. However, what I'll say is interesting is the pricing model that they're planning. I know what I pay for a 300 megabit connection right now, and Charter is talking about, and for those of you who don't know, Charter markets their service under the name Spectrum. You may not be aware of that. So Charter and Spectrum are one and the same. Charter bought Time Warner Cable, not Time Warner, but Time Warner Cable and Bright House and one other company in 2016 and 2017 and rebranded their service as Spectrum. Anyway, they're talking about prices for gigabit starting in your first 12 months with a bonus price of $105 and going up to $125 for gigabit speed. I pay more than that for 300 right now. I'd be all in if it meant that my bill goes down. They offer a speed above mine, and they wanted to charge me another $100 a month for the speed above mine. I'd be good for this if I get faster speeds and my price goes down.
Yeah, well, no doubt. I mean, I'm just thinking about, because like I had 25 megabit per second, and then I got an upgrade last year from 25 to 75, and honestly, I haven't noticed a difference. I guess if I had more devices concurrently doing things on the internet, maybe that's where the difference comes in.
Or you were doing a lot of bandwidth intensive stuff all at once.
Yes, but stuff happens. Like, so for example, I was just looking this up. So 75 Mbps megabit per second is what I have now.
Okay.
That should mean that I get 562 megabytes per minute, right? So that means I should be able to get a gigabyte every, minute and 50 seconds or something, right? Yesterday, my son was on the PlayStation and the PlayStation wanted to download a 7.5 gigabyte update.
Uh-huh.
It was going to take well over an hour
Yep.
to do that. So I had the bandwidth, according to the bandwidth that I have, that should take no more than like 15, 13 minutes or something.
Right. You had the bandwidth, but that doesn't mean that Sony was going to push at the speed that you can consume at.
Right. So I mean, that, I guess that's my point, is like, in order for these high speeds to really be worth something, you have to every link in the chain has to be high speed as well.
Exactly. Absolutely. In general, it's actually kind of why I've found, when Google Fiber was installing gigabit speeds, I kept laughing at people who were all excited about it because, like you said, for most people, it's never going to affect anything because the whole network has to be upgraded for it to mean anything, because YouTube doesn't push at a gigabit a second up, so you're not going to receive from YouTube at a gigabit a second down. Netflix doesn't. Nobody does.
Even if they did, I mean, there's all these other points in the chain, right?
Absolutely, because you don't know where you're going to get routed through. That's
right.
That's the way the internet works. Things get routed. It's why I always tell people don't send anything that matters through email.
Now, I mean, it's progress. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's nice that people are getting this amount of bandwidth, because hopefully at other points, the fact that people have it at other points in the routing, hopefully will get faster too. And
absolutely,
you'll know that there's nothing on your end stopping it. But the people are going to get excited that, wow, it's going to be so fast.
Right.
I mean, I guess what's good about that is if you've got like, a family of like 5 people and they're all watching a streaming 4K video or something, they could all do it.
Sure.
Without a problem.
Sure.
But,
or if you're using your NVIDIA Shield on NVIDIA Now or GeForce Now.
Yeah. So, it's right. I mean, I think
the idea that the infrastructure is starting to see an upgrade to that next level, I think is a great thing. Because like you said, every link has to be upgraded, but it has to start somewhere, and it looks like Charter and Comcast are one of the places where it's going to start. So
yeah, I guess
good on 'em.
I guess what I'm saying to the audience is I wouldn't really pay extra for that.
Yeah, definitely don't pay more for it, because it's not going to, especially since your up speed isn't going to go anything above 35 for at least, my guess is for at least a year.
See, now mine is 75 up and down,
yes,
so I guess that's better.
Because fiber has the ability to have symmetrical speeds. Copper does not have the ability for symmetrical speeds right now, but only because of the communication standard that the cable industry is using. I think they're using version 3.1 of their standard. I think 3.2 is supposed to introduce symmetrical speeds. However, it's probably going to require new hardware. So,
yeah, and you want symmetrical speeds, everyone, because, I mean, that's how you're going to do things like have video calls.
Yes.
So, you really need that.
For sure.
Yeah, you really need that upload speed. I know that, like, a lot of places, they think of their, like, this classic cable move. They think of people as being consumers. So, they're just going to passively watch stuff, send things down to them. But, this is 2018. People don't just use the internet for downloading stuff, for consumption. they make things, they communicate, you know.
There's a lot of content creators, not just content consumers. So symmetrical speeds are a big deal. I mean, I know that tonight when I upload this show, it does not matter. Well, to two of the three services that the video files get uploaded to, I max my network connection out. My up speed is my bottleneck for uploading to both Microsoft Azure and to YouTube. It is not my bottleneck for Facebook. Facebook is, but for uploading files to YouTube and Microsoft Azure, I max my network speed. So I'd love to have more than 35. I offered, when it was Bright House, I offered to give them 100 meg down back if they'd give me 10 more up. They told me they couldn't do it. Which made me sad. Anyway, the reason to be excited about this is that honestly, the reason why I care about this is it's the first step of 2 in getting better upload speeds into the cable communication standard, which for most, honest to God, for most people, having the ability to have symmetrical upload and download speeds on cable is a big deal, and having a network that can support gigabit makes that symmetrical possible. So good on you guys. I just wish that Tampa and Orlando was one of your markets. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. Obviously, we all know Amazon Prime offers free shipping, sometimes same day, depending on what it is you're ordering and where you are. And included in that now is the 2-hour Whole Foods delivery, which just launched in 4 cities. But what you may not know is all of the other cool stuff that you can get as well. Did you know that you can get Amazon Prime Music, which is several million tracks available for free on your devices, included in your Prime subscription, and Amazon Prime Video, which works the same way. Movies and TV shows, including original content like Man in the High Castle, available as part of your subscription. And if you use Twitch, you get 1 free subscription per month to help financially support some of your favorite streamers. There's other features like Prime Photos, which is unlimited photo storage, which we talked a number of weeks ago about wanting to back up all your photos on your phone before your manufacturer bricks it on accident. And to find out about all of the features that come along with Amazon Prime, and to sign up for a free 30-day trial if you do not currently have it, you can go to f5live.tv/prime. So speaking of YouTube, in our last segment there, let's talk about YouTube. They've kind of had a rough 12 months from a content curation standpoint, let's say. We've talked a number of times about, all of the social sites, whether it be YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, and their desire to stay away from the curation process because it puts a lot of problems into the works. But YouTube has kind of been demanded. Well, all of them have, with the fake news stuff and all. Anyway, YouTube is facing its own interesting problem in that some of their top content producers are idiots. And by that, I mean, we had PewDiePie last year who paid a group, I think it was 1 or 2 African men to hold a anti-Semitic sign for a video. And obviously that created problems for everybody involved. But YouTube took quick action, Disney took quick action, and you don't really hear about him anymore until the last couple of weeks when you have the new version of him, Logan Paul, who pulls the same kind of weird crap. And a couple of weeks ago, if you've been anywhere on the internet, you probably know that a couple of weeks ago he was in Japan and he insulted the Japanese people to their faces in their home country, made a video and published it, and YouTube did nothing about that. And then in another video, he went to what is colloquially known as the suicide forest. It's like the second or third most common place on the planet for people to kill themselves, where he encountered a body, filmed a video, which was kind of mocking, and published it. And YouTube didn't do anything about it for several days until the online rage had kind of exploded. And then they responded in a way that was weird. And then Logan Paul went away for a couple of weeks after posting an apologetic video. And then he came back with a video in which he uses a taser on a rat. So he didn't learn anything, but what YouTube did was responded quickly to that video. Not so much the suicide video, but responded to the tasing of a dead rat video by removing all ads from his platform. So the question has been to YouTube, what the hell are your policies? What are the guidelines? Can we know what's going to get people in trouble and maybe apply them? And so this week, especially in response to the Logan Paul incident, YouTube has released official guidelines, community guidelines on what is and is not acceptable on YouTube. And as you would expect from YouTube, they are fascinatingly vague and will likely continue to play this this censorship whack-a-mole game that YouTube has been playing for the last year or so, which is bizarre. I think they either need to make a decision that they're going to be content curators or not. What do you think, Avram?
Not would be easier.
For sure. Obviously, they'd have to respond to DMCA takedown requests, and maybe
yes,
because that's a legal requirement, and maybe
right.
maybe some sort of a community guideline, like manual, like if people go in like they used to, like people say this video has a problem, this is what it is, and after it gets a certain number of complaints, they go take a look at it. Maybe if they go back to the old way, instead of trying to be proactive, maybe it would be easier for them or better. I think
they're responding to publicity.
Yeah.
I think they're responding to negative publicity. I don't think that they really want to do it, but I think they're responding to negative publicity. Sort of like periodically Twitter responds to negative publicity. It starts kicking people off for saying, for being bullies or racists or threatening people or all these horrible things.
And they release community guidelines, which you don't hear about again for another 6 months until somebody says something and the internet goes crazy.
It's, you know what, I do feel some sympathy for YouTube and even for Twitter in these cases.
Absolutely.
They want to be platform providers. I don't think that they want to be publishers. I don't think that they want to be responsible for the content.
To an extent. Now, to be fair, YouTube does have a very specific curation process in YouTube Red, right? Where they literally are content producers with their partners, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about YouTube Prime, the thing that we think of when we think of YouTube.
You know what, though? Here's who they really have to respond to, actually. It's not the press. It's advertisers.
Yes, it is.
Advertisers do not... So, probably most people listening to this, watching this, know this, but advertising is extremely automated in 2018. So I don't think there are too many advertisers, and I have not set up an ad account on YouTube to run ads, so I don't say this with great authority, but I don't think there are too many advertisers who say, I want to run my video pre-rolls on Logan Paul videos.
Right.
I think they say I want to run my video pre-rolls on videos that reach a certain audience or videos that
channels
are of
that
a certain
have
genre
channels
or
that
whatever.
have a certain number of subscribers. Yeah.
Right, like all that stuff. They don't say they don't say Logan Paul, I want to be on him. I mean,
Sure.
maybe they could, but my guess is that
it
companies
is,
that are buying don't care that much.
I would say it is a capability for channels as large as Logan Paul's or PewDiePie's, where an advertiser can say, I specifically want to advertise with this person. But yeah, in general, the advertising filters are about what they are on Facebook. You can talk about, all kinds of statistics about the viewer gender and location and, all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, they're not usually saying, I want to advertise with Logan Paul.
Yeah, it's called programmatic advertising,
Right.
and it's everywhere on the internet, whether it's YouTube or even a site like like Tom's Guide that I work for.
Sure.
A lot of our ads are programmatically purchased.
Sure.
They're not necessarily saying I want to be on this article and I want to be on or even necessarily on this website.
Sure.
So that's where Google has to step in, because if you're an advertiser and your ad starts running on this content, now all of a sudden you're going to be mad at Google.
Sure.
Like, I don't want my brand associated with this.
Right.
Right.
It was the outrage that happened last year over ads showing up on ISIS-related content on YouTube.
Right. So that's the thing. Like, you don't want your ad showing up on a certain place. So it's more about the outrage of the advertiser, I think, than the outrage of the viewer.
For sure.
Although one somewhat affects the other, because they don't want to be seen as supporting this. Advertisers don't want to be seen by viewers as supporting this type of content.
Sure. Verizon doesn't want their potential customers creating a boycott of Verizon because a Verizon ad ran before the rat taser.
Right. So, yes, companies, marketers are very risk averse. And this is a risk they really don't need to take.
For sure. And I'm 100% with you. I feel a lot of sympathy for the networks in this case. I have personally had user-generated content platform ideas before and ignored them because I don't want to get into the content curation space. And it happened. If you get popular, it happens. You don't have a choice. At some point, you have to respond to stuff. And this is YouTube, who doesn't want to be playing that game, having to respond to stuff that they don't want to.
Yeah, I think they also kind of want to have their cake and eat it too, though, because they want to upscale as well. They want to be, sell subscriptions to YouTube Red.
Sure.
They want to get, some name brand content on there.
And Logan Paul used to be one of those name brand contents that was on YouTube Red, and is no longer.
Who watches this stuff?
I don't know. Teenagers, from what I understand about Logan Paul. His because he's only 22. His average subscriber is like 19 or something like that. With a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds skewing that number lower.
So just the people that advertise, just the people with all the disposable income that advertisers want to reach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not you. I think what advertisers want to reach are generally people who are like 22 to 35.
So his age.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yes.
Perfect.
Just old enough to have a credit card.
But not old enough to have had it long enough to have ruined their credit.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I definitely feel bad for YouTube on this, but on the other hand, they have other markets where they actively like censor and demonetize and stuff, which I find fascinating. So, sometimes I don't feel like they don't want to be in that space, because if you're, for example, if your video or description uses the word gun, even if you're a news show, they'll demonetize the content. So they definitely seem like there's a particular level of wanting to be in that space. Despite the fact that, like, if they wanted to run ads on gun videos, it's a lucrative space, but whatever. They're an interesting company with policies that are not evenly enforced, and I think that's where the concern is here. I'd like to see them come up with some policies and stop playing the whack-a-mole game. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
It's hard because it's hard to have hard and fast policies, and then you open yourself up to a lot of problems. That's why things are probably written somewhat vaguely, because it makes it more difficult.
Sure, yeah. And it gives them some legal wiggle room if they don't respond to something fast enough. That, well, it didn't quite fit our thing yet, and now it does, and so we've responded to it. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you to those of you who have joined us live. We've got a number of live viewers, and we've got a particular friend in our live stream chat room, Juan, who has been a viewer for a long time and has been gone for a while, and it's good to have him back.
Hey, Juan.
So thank you to those of you who joined us live. If you can't join us live, that is okay. Pluckitslive.com/join us from there, or /subscribe. From there, you can see all of our shows and subscribe to them. Our CES content is just about done, but that does not mean that the fun will be ending. A lot of that content is for products that aren't coming out yet, so they will be important all year long. And then we are working with a new partner for a new series, which I'm very excited about. And then over the next couple of weeks, Avram's got a really cool complex article coming to laptopmag.com, and we've got our cryptocurrency article coming to pluckitslive.com in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that as well. And I guess with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we will see you guys back next week. Ciao.